Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 179. Today I've got two lists for you because there was two anniversaries that rolled in this past week. The Nintendo 64 is 30 and Sonic the Hedgehog hit 35. So we're going to do a top 25 N64 game list and rank the Sonic franchise games I've played. I don't have any pickups. I'm in the middle of starting the inventory video. That's why everything back there is so vacant. But you'll see what's going on with all of my things in the next episode. All right, that's enough foreshadowing. Let's dive into these lists. All right, let's get into list number 1 for this episode. And it is the 30th anniversary of the Nintendo 64. This past week, for Japan at least. They got the system in late June, while North America got it, I think, in October or November. But 30 years is just a wild thing to think about, because I had a Nintendo 64 pretty close to launch. And in a lot of ways, it is a very nostalgic system. It established a lot of what 3D gaming could be. Alongside the PlayStation and to a lesser extent the Saturn. It really could not do 2D very well. There's not very many 2D games on the system. The N64 was designed to push 3D, and it did a pretty good job at that at the time. There's a lot of, we'll just say, some hang-ups going back to some of these games, because game cameras have gotten so much better. Controls have more fidelity now. There's more flexibility in the physical controller. Dual analog sticks was a revolution of its own when Sony basically did that with their first iteration of is it DualShock, if I remember correctly? That was a big deal, and really helped loosen up the tight cameras that a lot of N64 games ultimately were saddled with. But when I look at this list, there are some super amazing games, and some of which still remain on my top 111. So to start off, these are all the games I have had at least a few minutes of experience playing. And we're going to go through real quick and tackle this list down to 25 games like I've done with other system-based ranking lists, and then get those games ranked. So I'm going to go ahead and do some evaluating, and then we'll be back. All right, well, let's start from the bottom. And we'll work up. NFL Blitz is a fun, arcadey football game that I remember playing quite a bit with friends when I was younger. It definitely improved with its sequels. And the Dreamcast specifically, I think, made it even better because it just had a little bit more sheen and animation to it. But for a launching point and a port, I think the N64 one is perfectly fine, and it is a fun time. Space Station Silicon Valley is not my DMA design choice for the N64. It is for some people. It's a quirky platformer where you're a little computer chip that jumps into these computer animals to solve various puzzles and such to get through a stage. It's charming, but it's definitely not as polished as I would like. And when you've got some of the greatest progenitors of 3D platforming on the system, it definitely is not as impactful for me, at least. Sin and Punishment never was released in North America at the time of the N64. Treasure in general got quite a few of their N64 efforts just left in Japan. And it's unfortunate because Sin and Punishment in particular, I think, has such a strong art style, really good soundtrack. And I actually bought the N64 controller so I could play the silly thing. I just haven't done it yet. I've dabbled a bit with the first level, and I think it's fun, and I want to get more into it. So That's why it's in the top 25, is that my initial run through showed promise. Pokemon Snap is a really clever gimmick. It's got really just the initial 151, and it's not even all of them. It's like around half. In cute little scenarios that you're on a cart and you're just taking pictures and interacting with the environment. It's a really clever game idea. Hal did a really good job fleshing that one out. It's a Pokemon game that I actually enjoyed some. Turok 2. Compared to Rare's FPS outings, I think that Turok 2 is a solid third place. It's too big. I think that's its biggest issue, is that the maps are just too large. But it's got a really creative weapon set. The enemies are fun to fight against, and it looks quite nice on the N64, and the remaster looks even better. And plays a little bit better too, to be honest with you. The frame rate's better. And there's less fog. And Acclaim's best game. How many times do I get to put an Acclaim game in the top 25? Very rarely. They had a few pretty good bangers on the N64. And there was a couple others that were in consideration. Blast Core would probably be higher on this list if the silly dump truck wasn't there. That dump truck is so annoying to do missions on, and they give you too many missions with that dump truck. Otherwise, I think that like the mechs and the bulldozer and everything else you can control is super fun, and the premise is really engaging, and the music is eclectic and just so rare. It's a really cool game. I just think that the dump truck ruins a lot of it, because you just keep coming back to that thing and its finicky controls. San Francisco Rush Extreme Racing is a very solid arcade racer. I remember spending quite a bit of time with it when I was a teenager. The arcade version is better, obviously, but the N64 one definitely swings high and does really well. I was definitely sucked in by game players giving it a 98% back in the day. I wouldn't give it that high of a score. I'm not that big into racers, but the fact that there's a few racers on this list does indicate that the N64 had a pretty hot streak with them, and this is the first we'll be talking about. Diddy Kong Racing is Rare's best effort on the genre. It just gets too hard. The deeper you get into that game and you start dealing with bosses that are just really cheap, rubber band AI obnoxious, along with just really interesting mechanical choices. There's a character named Crunch that we've recently discovered has major limitations, that you actually have to tap the button to get more acceleration out of him. So he could actually go up a hill, for example. Just really strange mechanics. The courses are fun. The music is jaunty. It works for the game. It's unique in that it's got adventure game stuff going on, so you got to do like missions and things. It's solid. It's just too hard. The deeper you get into it, it's too hard. And I have beaten the entire thing. I've done Adventure 2 and everything when I was a teenager, when I had way more patience. I could never imagine doing that now if it ever comes out on NSO. I'm happy with my memories of it and watching other people play it at this point. Mario Kart 64. I gave it the slight edge in the kart racer battle here, mainly because I have more nostalgia with it. I think that there's some really great courses and music in Mario Kart 64. It doesn't look great. It didn't look particularly great in 1996 when it came out in Japan, and 97 when it came out here. The sprite work tries, but it is certainly not as strong as Ogre Battle 64 or Mischief Makers by any stretch of the imagination. But it's serviceable. It works. But some of these courses have moved on to newer games, and that's where I would rather play them. Super Smash Bros. 1 launched a superstar franchise for Nintendo. The first time that these characters all crossed over beyond like cameos, and proved to be a really good idea. That Smash Bros. Melee would then take even further on the GameCube, and then we would get to Ultimate with its 80 plus characters, with like 20 of them from outside Nintendo, and just the absolute ludicrous amounts of content. The original Super Smash Bros. Game is certainly more grounded in its foundation. It has 12 characters and 9 stages and 9 songs for the stages, as along with some accompanying music. It has a simple one-player mode. It has a couple mini-game things like break the targets and board the platforms. It's perfectly adequate, and it's a great launch point, and it's probably the best fighter on the system. There was a couple others that were on the consideration list, but it's for me, it's easily Smash that wins that award. It was a good multiplayer time, but once Melee showed up, it really just kind of outclassed it. I will say this about the original Super Smash Bros. Though, it has an aesthetic charm that the other games don't, because they're like action figures. It's like all about imagination in a really creative and fun way that the other games just kind of lose over time, and like Ultimate is just like, it's these characters. But I think that the original game is really, really charming, and that commercial is still one of the best ones ever made. Star Fox 64 is the best shooter. That's not an FPS. One of the best rail shooters of all time, honestly. It's little wonder that Nintendo has remade it 3 times. Lost count. I'm very excited about the Switch 2 remake. I think that a new visual sheen and expanding upon the cutscenes, but more or less leaving the core gameplay and mechanics alone, seems like a really good idea. But this is still a highlight of the platform, and again, it's little wonder that Nintendo can't seem to escape revisiting this well, because it's the best game in the franchise. Bomberman 64 is also my choice for best Bomberman game that I played. I think that it is a really charming adventure coupled with a pretty engaging multiplayer mode. Is it the best multiplayer the series has had? Probably not. I would probably argue that the TurboGrafx might have that, or like Saturn Bomberman maybe, with its, like, doesn't that have like 10 with 2 multi-taps? I lose track of how many characters can get into that. But Bomberman 64 was just, it hit at the right time. So like the character designs of the main antagonists were really cool, and I remember drawing them a ton when I was a kid. It's just a really great game, and I would love it if Konami would get around to releasing some of their N64 games on NSO, or get these games out. I'm glad there's a Bomberman collection coming out this year, but I would love it if the N64 games got a collection soon too. Paper Mario, not as good as Super Mario RPG, probably not as good as Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. But I think that it's a really solid transition from what Square brought to the table to Intelligent Systems finding their own distinctive voice with the franchise. I think it's a very solid beginning, and it's definitely a fun game. But it's very grounded in the Mushroom Kingdom. And you can do a little bit of exploring in some interesting spots, but it was really Thousand Year Door that pushed the creativity side of the franchise. This is very like, Peach is captured by Bowser again. Let's get some friends over time that help you travel around the Mushroom Kingdom so you can rescue her. It's very, very, very grounded in Mario. But to not just continue downplaying Paper Mario, it was one of the best RPGs on this system. It's number 2, in my opinion, behind Ogre Battle. And it's a good game. It's a really good game. 1080 Snowboarding. this is another game where I would probably have it ranked higher if it was not so hard. This is another very challenging game. The AI, it gets brutal the higher up you get. I was trying to get Deathly Peak, I forget what they call the last course, unlocked, but the AI is just like super flying off into the stratosphere, and I'm still like a third of the course. And even with rewind and save stating, it's proving frustrating. Like Wave Race, in comparison, I did have to abuse rewind and save states, but I was able to do it. I don't know if I can in 1080. Add in really complicated controls for tricks. And this is a game that I think is designed for youthful hands. The hands of 43-year-old me are not really wired for 1080 anymore. So if it wasn't so hard, and if I had more youthful hands, I might have 1080 in the top 10, but it's gonna be here. Majora's Mask. I don't have the nostalgia that I do for Ocarina of Time from Majora's Mask. I do think Majora's Mask is the bolder game, the more creative game, the wilder game. But I also think with some of those swings that it doesn't quite land the same. I think that the mask system and the day-night cycle and everyone scripted to a schedule, I think that's ingenious and super ahead of its time. But it also makes trying to get everything done more annoying because you have to replay the game if you mess up something, because there's no rewind in the original release. Nor is there any reload your save. It doesn't work that way. So it has built-in frustrations with the way that they designed it that, you know, NSO alleviates by being able to rewind and save state it. So for me, I like Majora's Mask. I don't love Majora's Mask. Great game. Really, really wild. And I would love to see another Zelda game in this mold of creativity and like texture and darkness. But I would probably always go with, if I have to pick an N64 Zelda that I want to play, it's going to be Ocarina. Body Harvest is the first of our top 10 games, and it has been in the top 111 before. All of the top 10 games have. It is the prototype for Grand Theft Auto 3, in my humble opinion. It's very similar in a lot of ways, but I think Body Harvest is the better game. I think that the camera is less annoying. I think that the aiming is better. I think that the general premise of the game is more interesting. It is ambitious as hell. It is pushing the limits of what the N64 can do. It had a very troubled and long development. It was originally under Nintendo. They wanted to turn it into an RPG. DMA Design pushed back and said that's not really what we are about. Nintendo eventually let it go. Midway picked it up for North America, and Gremlin, I think, released it in Europe. It's a really cool game. It's a really, really groundbreaking 3D action game, but it is rough around the edges. It is very challenging, and sometimes in unfair ways. It's not pretty to look at. But it is a really ambitious game, and I applaud DMA for going so hard and sticking to their guns so much with Body Harvest, because I think that in its core, it is truly one of the most innovative games on the system. It's just had a lot of trouble getting to where it got, so it couldn't be as polished as it could have been. Banjo-Kazooie in some ways is the better 3D platformer on the system than my number one game on it. I know that's a bit of a shock to say. I think that Banjo-Kazooie looks better. I think that in some ways it plays better. I think in some ways it sounds better. And in some ways it has better level design. But it also has the beginnings of rare bloat, where there's just so many things to collect. And Banjo-Kazooie manages to thread that line, but only just, because then they lost that line. That line was lost, painted over, buried with sand, and then bulldozed into oblivion with Banjo-Tooie and Donkey Kong 64, and pretty much every other platformer effort that followed. They just lost control of their tendencies, and collectathon exists as a term for a reason. I think that Banjo-Kazooie, on the whole, is a really great game with a couple late game annoyances. I think Rusty Bucket Bay, in the way that the game's designed, is not fun in a lot of ways, because to get all 100 notes, you can't die. If you die, you lose all your notes and you have to start over. And that game just has poisoned water and lots of water that you have to swim under to not drown. And everything is like spread out so far. Click Clock Wood is another late game level that I love the aesthetic and I love the concept and I love a lot about it, but having to do 4 of the same level in different seasons in all one run is exhausting. It's a great game though, and I think it's another one of the visually strongest games on the system. It's super fun. It's got a great soundtrack. It's also mean though. I do have to say this. This also was probably one of the meanest games that I'm gonna have this high on a list. Because it's just fat shaming like everybody. It's beauty shaming everybody. It's just it's a very negative game in terms of writing and characters, and how they interact with each other. That being said, it's a really great game. But I should be honest. It is not a very progressive game in a lot of ways. GoldenEye 007, the surprise of the system. No one expected this licensed FPS that came out 2 years after a movie that was well enough received, but not like the best James Bond movie that's ever been made levels, to come out and basically define the Nintendo 64 in a year where there was nothing else that quite hit in 1997. Basically took the 4-player controller ports and made everyone go buy the other 3 controllers if you didn't have 1 or 2 already. Because that was such a brilliant mode that came together as an afterthought. Honestly, Rare barely got that functioning before the game shipped. And yet that was basically the thing people remember. The solo campaign is perfectly good, too. It's got some great level design. It pioneered mission objectives and first-person shooters. It showed that a console FPS can hang with the PC. It's a truly phenomenal game. That set the stage for my favorite FPS of all time, which we'll get to when we get to Perfect Dark. But GoldenEye is a truly memorable game. I have a copy signed by Jaws himself, Richard Kiel. That is like one of my most precious gaming memorabilia pieces, because this game meant a lot to me, and having an actor that I actually grew up around, and finally got to meet as an adult before he passed away, and talk to him a bit about GoldenEye and get some insights from him, which I share on my blog, and I'll put that in the description. Just kind of made this game even more important to me than all of the incredible memories of playing it 4-player with my friends back when I was younger. Wonderful game. Truly one of the best licensed games of all time, which will probably be a list that I need to create at some point, because I was thinking about that the other day. The greatest racing game ever, Wave Race 64. I adore Wave Race 64. I don't like most racing games like deep in my heart, and yet there's something about Wave Race, the music, the vibes, the levels, it all comes together so beautifully with some of the best wave physics that I've ever experienced in a game. I personally think that Wave Race 64 was uncontested in ocean realism until Mario Kart World. Because doing the jet ski like racing in Mario Kart World reminds me so much of Wave Race, and it makes me want Wave Race. And instead I'm getting Switch Sports Resort, and I don't want that. I want a new Wave Race with Mario Kart World physics, because they got it. They nailed it. This game is brilliant. It is so fun. It's not super complex. It's not super deep, but there is just this nuance and feel to how these jet skis interact with the ocean and with your controller that is perfectly tuned. And once you get it, you are just having the time of your life racing these things. It's such a wonderful game. I'm so glad I unlocked everything on the Switch version, so I can play all the stages now. It's so good. I'm not a big sports game fan either, and yet International Superstar Soccer 98 is the greatest sports game of all time, and it is the only one that's on my top 111 list, and it deserves to be there. Konami delivered with this franchise time and time again. I want 2000. I would love to own 2000. I can't find it. But 98 is really, really good. It expands so much on what ISS 64 brought to the table, added a lot more nuance to how you can interact with your team, more character creation options. So I created like all of this webcomic isolate cast that are male in the game. I think there might be Black Blood from the original cast in there too to fill it out. It is just perfect. But not as perfect as these top 5. One of them even has perfect in the title. Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber, was my introduction to this franchise, and it is still my favorite out of them all. I have them all, in one way or another. I have Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen on my Wii. I have Tactics Ogre Reborn, and I have a Game Boy Advance copy of Tactics Ogre Knights of Lotus. I don't have Gaiden for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but otherwise I have it all. But I still have my boxed in 64 Ogre Battle 64. I bought it on the Wii and Wii U, if I remember correctly. I need to play it again really bad, because it could probably top Ocarina of Time. Especially now that I played Unicorn Overlord, and now I'm itching to compare the two again. So that might be something that I get into when I get caught up on some other games that I want to play for this year. But I think that Ogre Battle 64 is easily the best RPG on the system. It is a brilliant tactics game that makes you think differently than like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics or other games like it. You move soldiers around on an overworld map, and they wander around freely, and they battle on their own. You have no real control of them. You set them up in a menu to do what they do. So you can have someone with a magical weapon, for example, be in the front line and use it physically, or in the back line and use it magically. And part of how Ogre Battle 64's strategy works is combining classes in a way that they do the most damage most effectively against other teams that could mess up what your layout is. Unicorn Overlord takes that to the next level in terms of micromanaging your army to really strategize how to best sync all those moves together in very creative ways. Ogre Battle 64 is more interested in the politics of what's going on in Zenobia, the moment-to-moment character interactions, and the establishment of a resistance against the tyrannical empire and the dark machinations brewing underneath. It's a very, very well-written game for the time. And outside of some translation flubs here and there, it's probably the best written game on this system. It is just a really fantastic game with a great soundtrack, really compelling characters, a really fun gameplay system that is just deep with, like, there's a morale system, for example. So if you choose to attack something that is weaker than you, it might affect your morale, for example. Class changes are really compelling as well. It's a really fun game. I love it. I really need to replay it super bad. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Landmark game. Probably one of the greatest games of the 20th century. I was going to say the 1990s, but that is true as well. But I would say the 20th century, going all the way back to when games really got their start in the late 60s. It is a revolutionary title that impacted me as a teenager profoundly. I remember, and I've told this story on my blog, but I'll just tell you a short version. I remember going to my friend's house and playing it and watching him play it and obsessing over it. And I recorded what we did on a VHS tape, and after getting back home was watching that tape on loop. And my mom took sympathy on me and drove me down an hour to pick up my copy earlier than she planned. And I managed to beat the game ahead of my friend who had it like 3 or 4 days ahead of me. What a wild time that was for me. Few games I have been that like enthralled with, especially in my teens. But Ocarina of Time is a marvelous game. It's a little rough to play now because it's just a bit stiff, and Link is not as flexible as later iterations of him are. I am excited about the remake. I will say that. I am being cautiously optimistic that this will translate to being what Star Fox ultimately ended up being, which is a really impactful modernizing that doesn't really muck up what was great about the original. It just builds upon it. That's my hope. We'll see what happens, because they've announced jack and or shit about what that game's going to ultimately be as of the time of this recording. But I don't know what else I could say. It is a masterpiece. Some of the greatest dungeons, some of the greatest enemy encounters and boss encounters of the era. It left an imprint. Wonderful soundtrack, one of Koji Kondo's best as well. Just truly marvelous game. Perfect Dark is just ahead of Ocarina of Time, and it's really because I have spent days playing Perfect Dark's multiplayer in solo. I can't tell you how much I love the way Perfect Dark feels. It is what I want from a first-person shooter, and no other game has captured it the way Perfect Dark has. BioShock's close, Half-Life is close. What have I played more recently that I thought was pretty solid, but didn't hook me the same way? I can't remember. Like Days Ex, and Human Revolution, since I kind of count those as FPSs. Perfect Dark is just like, that's what I want from the genre. The single player content is super expanded over what GoldenEye had. I will say that it kind of starts falling apart when the Skeetar starts getting really involved with the plot. But like the first 2/3, I would say through like the sub level, are really good. And then from there, it starts to fall off. But multiplayer is where it's at for me. And I love the fact they added bots. I love the fact that there's so much more content. There's tons of maps. There's tons of weapons. There's tons of modes and options. It just makes it fun to run through maps over and over and over again with my built team that I've replicated on the Switch Online version and play this delightful game over and over and over again. I love Perfect Dark. Soundtrack's fantastic. I love Joanna as a character. I think she's great. The world around her is really interesting and compelling. it's a wonderful game. Truly wonderful game. And it's a shame that Rare was sold to Microsoft after this, because I think that if Nintendo had kept Rare and they actually did Perfect Dark Zero with Nintendo, it would have been a truly deserving follow-up. And we have yet to get a truly deserving follow-up ever since. And Microsoft doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. But that's another episode. Resident Evil 2 is second place. I recently revisited this at the beginning of the year on the PlayStation. But I have super strong nostalgia for the N64 version because it is a testament to ingenuity and compression. This game shouldn't be on the N64. It really shouldn't. And yet it is. Angel Studios worked with Factor 5 and with Nintendo to get this game to be on the system with all its cutscenes, with all of its gameplay. There's compromises, yes, but there's also things about it that are truly exceptional. Like, the character models are the best looking of the era. The backgrounds aren't, but the character models look fantastic. They added in additional notes that are exclusive to the N64 version. There's a randomizer, one of the first in the history of video games, that's official in Resident Evil 2 and 64 that moves all the items around. There's invincibility and infinite ammo codes, so that way new players can get kind of the grip of things and then start adapting themselves and turning those codes off. I think that Resident Evil 2 on its own, in its original release, is ingenious. But I think the N64 version deserves where it is on this list, not just because it's a fantastic game, but because it's an accomplishment by Angel Studios to get this game at the level that it is on a cartridge. It's the biggest cartridge that was released for the system. It's pretty obvious why, at the point this was released, that not many other companies jumped on that bandwagon. But I'm so glad that Capcom took a big swing with this one, because it basically made me a Resident Evil fan. And as it's probably apparent, I still adore this franchise to this day. All right, we are at the top of this list. And for me, personally, Super Mario 64 is the pinnacle of the franchise. It is the pinnacle of the N64. It is what defines Mario for me at this point in my life, and it is the defining game of the system, and it is a defining game for me. Maybe a little less impactful than Ocarina of Time. But I think that Super Mario 64 basically hits what I want out of a Mario experience. It's got really creative levels that give you a lot of room to explore. It's a little more forgiving, at least in the early stages, so you can kind of get your bearings in this 3D landscape that you're now in, and learning how to control the camera and positioning and trying to figure out how to land jumps and do platforming challenges in 3D. It doesn't land it 100% of the time, but it lands at a surprisingly high amount considering how pioneering this game is. It's inventive. It brings in enough elements from the past games, but enough new elements that have basically become staples moving forward. It's just a marvelous game. I have played it 4 or 5 times and gotten 120 stars, and I have played it, I'm sure, several other times that I've just wanted to goof around in a level and get all the stars again. Earlier, in fact, last month, at the time of this recording, I was playing it a little bit again, and I got through Bomb on Battlefield, Womp's Fortress, and Cool Mountain. There we go. And was starting Jolly Roger Bay and I got all the stars in the first 3 and got like 1 or 2 in Jolly Roger. And I was having a great time. This game just feels incredible. It's clear how much Nintendo needed this game to succeed on a control front because it's there. It feels great even when you're playing it on a non-N64 controller. This is one of the greatest platforming experiences I've personally had, and I just absolutely adore it to pieces. It is another masterpiece on a platform with several of them that are very important. And I think for me, this is what defines the N64 the most, is Super Mario 64. So happy 30th, Nintendo 64. Thank you for all of these wonderful memories and amazing experiences. We've got a little bit more to tackle, though, because there's another anniversary that happened recently that I can breeze through pretty quickly. All right, well, we have another major franchise anniversary in 2026 with Sonic. I believe Sonic is celebrating 35 years this year. Because I think Sonic 1 came out in 1991, if my memory's correct. So, I pulled together every Sonic game I've played, or at least have a memory of playing. Compared to some other franchises I've done this for, it's a lot smaller. I'm not going to do a character ranking list because that is just asking for an obscene amount of, I don't know what this character's about, and I will spare you from that. So we will just rank the games. They're more or less in chronological order as of right now. My Sonic experience is primarily on the Genesis and the GameCube, with a little bit in the Wii U Switch era. Alright, well, out of all of these, I know I've got a couple that are floating pretty low on my bottom list, so since I can magically switch lists for a hot second, let's go and find that bottom list and remind myself what's on it. You'll see most of it just at the very bottom row in its entirety. And have I actually cleared every Sonic game off of the bottom 50? I think I did. I think I gave Sonic Spinball a pass. Because I didn't despise it as much as I remembered. So I still think that'll be the one that's at the very bottom of this list. However, Sonic Spinball could be a really great concept. It really could. It's just really faulty. The physics don't feel great. The pinball nature of the game is a little compromised by trying to be a little bit too much like Sonic. So it's like it just can't find that happy medium. So for me, it's my least favorite of the Sonic games. Sonic 3D Blast is probably next. And that really is just a mistaken idea for the Genesis. It might have worked better on the Saturn. But on the Genesis, it's just... the isometric angle is not a great one for a Sonic game built around speed, because you just can't see what you're doing well enough at that angle to really feel confident in anything that you're doing. So that one is pretty poor as well. Sonic and the Black Knight will be next. I hate Wii motion controls, and guess what this game is? It's a Sonic game with Wii motion controls to do attacks. I genuinely don't remember how I played it, but I wasn't very impressed by it, I can at least say that. Following that, it's going to get a little bit harder. I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to throw Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine down here. Perfectly fine game, it's just a reskin of Puyo Puyo. And why play this when you can play Puyo Puyo very easily now, and get a much jollier and more pleasing aesthetic experience? Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is just an unattractive reskin that I just don't find very appealing. And that's my hot take for today. Alright, from here I would probably stick Sonic Forces. I didn't play more than the demo, and it was only a stage. But I really think the gimmick of having your custom avatar was really the big selling feature of this game, more so than competent Sonic gameplay, and it could have been something, but it was just too grim, dark, and not what I really want out of a Sonic game, I think. So I didn't feel inspired to buy the full game. In fact, I feel like Sonic Forces just made me not want to play any more of the 3D games, including the well-received like remakes, remasters of like Sonic Colors and Sonic and Shadow Generations. I'm just not interested. From there, I probably would put Sonic R. This really was the only major Sonic release for the Saturn that wasn't a port or a compilation. And while the premise is fine and it's got a really good boppin' soundtrack to it, the camera's just not where you need it to enjoy it. And on top of that, the Saturn emulation on the Sonic Gems collection was just not great. Sonic the Fighters will probably be the last of the games that I have major critiques with. It's hard to believe this is by the Virtua Fighter team, and I'm just being very transparent on my feelings about it. This is just not up to the level of Virtua Fighter, and the Sonic characters are fine, but it's just not a very fun feeling game. I would much rather play Virtua Fighter or Fighting Vipers than play Sonic the Fighters. So like the thing that I really bought Sonic Gems for was Sonic CD, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This might be slight sacrilege, but for me, I think Sonic and Knuckles is next. I barely touched it, mainly because I'm not the biggest fan of Sonic 3. So these two games I feel just kind of go hand in hand here. I feel like Sonic 3 lost something, and I don't know what it is. It lost something from Sonic 1, 2, and CD for me, and it's got a bit of a visual overhaul that I'm not as big on. I like Sonic's design in the original games more than a Sonic 3 design. There's level design aspects that I don't like in Sonic 3, like Carnival Night Zone is horrible with those up and down platforms that don't tell you need to hit up and down on the D-pad to make them move. You think you're jumping, but no, it's actually up and down on the D-pad. I just feel like it's a step down in a lot of ways. And then because I didn't care for Sonic 3 that much, I didn't really dabble with Sonic and Knuckles that much either. So that's why they're where they're placed. Sonic Adventure 2 will be the last game on this row. I think that Sonic Adventure 1 is better, even though it might be a little less polished. And I think the variety in Sonic Adventure is why I would give it a higher rank, personally. And again, this was kind of the descent into the grim dark zone because, hey, look, it's Shadow the Hedgehog, the edgelord of the Sonic universe. Some people really like him. I think he's just ridiculous. But I can't put Sonic Adventure above these 5, though. I think that Sonic Adventure is solid. It's fun, but it is not built as well as the 5 games that are ahead of it. It's a beautiful game for its time and had some really memorable level design concepts. I still think that the Killer Well and the beach stage is just fantastic. And I really enjoyed the pinball parts in the casino stage. But there are some major faults with it. Like Big the Cat is always fishing, and the fishing minigame is adequate, but to build an entire game mode around it, that's asking a lot. Knuckles having to go search down emeralds that are a little bit iffy to hunt. That's not very fun after a while. The other 4, I think, get away with stuff a little bit better. But I do think Sonic Adventure is a landmark Dreamcast title that was the first to really capture the speed and platforming grace that the 2D games preceded it with, but it's still a little bit rough around the edges. And it has some characters that I would just prefer to not play as. All right, from here, we're going to put Sonic 1. Sonic 1 is a very solid foundation for what the series would become, but it is definitely the weakest of the top 5, in my opinion. I do think that there's some stages that have some really annoying gimmicks in them. You don't have Tails yet, so there's no like 2-player mode or anything, which I think is a novelty of Sonic 2 that I like more than a lot of other people do. The music is good, but I think Sonic 2 and CD and Mania get it better. Even Sonic 3 has, I think, better music than Sonic the Hedgehog 1. It's a perfectly fine game that I think would be better and better developed over the 16-bit and later in current-ish renditions in 2D. After that, it's going to get a little bit hard with these 4 because these are definitely like my 4 Sonic games. These are the ones that I love the most. If I remember correctly, and you're not going to see the entire bottom of this list. I don't think any Sonic games managed to survive my top 111 redo. I think they all eventually got culled out. So it's really up to me what I would pick. I'm going to slide Sonic 2 next, Sonic CD here, Transformed here, and then Mania Plus at the top. So Sonic 2 is my favorite on the Genesis. I'm not saying Sega CD, I'm saying Genesis. It's got the best music on that system, in my opinion. I love Tails being there so you could have somebody else play and basically have a little brother sister option that I think is a really cool concept. Tails I think adds a lot too. Just having that second character. The level design I think is arguably some of the best in the series. It's just a really good game, and I think the 2-player mode is the best one that I played in the series. The racing as Sonic and Tails is really fun. And 3 didn't quite master that, so that's another reason why it's down a little bit lower. Sonic CD is almost all vibes. It's almost all vibes, and honestly, a lot of those vibes are the PC version and not the original Sega CD version. I need to sit down and play the Sega CD version at some point, more than I have. I think that this game has been blessed with 2 great soundtracks. I'm just biased towards the US one because that's what I've heard, and I love Sonic Boom too much to turn it off. I think Metal Sonic is a fantastic antagonist, even more than Robotnik/Eggman, honestly. Just a really cool design. Amy's introduced here, but she's in a damsel in distress role, but gets an opportunity to shine more in later games. And I think that just the whole past, present, future gameplay mechanic and the Emerald minigame is the best thing that they did in all of the 2D games in the 16-bit era. I think that it just has a lot of innovation in it. And that animation at the beginning, my goodness. I gotta play this in entirety, but I have it on the PS3 as like basically like the definitive version. I need to see what's also on Origins, because Origins has CD, and I can't remember if they used I think they did use the Whitehead version, the headcanon version. But that game does have its flaws, unfortunately. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. This is in my favorite racing games of all time. It should be like 3rd or 4th. Let's find that list. That's the convenient thing about saving all these lists. 4th. Honestly, I could probably slide this above Mario Kart World at this point. I think that Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed is like lightning in a bottle. This is a brilliant combination of various Sega franchises coming together in a really organic way. And I'm not just saying this because I have an incredibly strong Skies of Arcadia bias, and that is, as of the recording of this video, the most recent version of Vice, or the franchise, in a modern Sega game, which is criminal. But I won't get on my Skies of Arcadia soapbox. I think that the course designs are fantastic. The cars control extremely well. The music is good. Not my favorite, but it's good. It's got a really nice arrangement of Sega characters. So there's a bunch of Sonic stuff, of course, but it's got Vice from Skies of Arcadia, as I mentioned, Joe Hisashi from Shinobi, Ulala and Pudding from Space Channel 5, I from Super Monkey Ball. I don't think Gilius Thunderhead is in this one. He might be. I lose track of who's all in this. Beat and Gum from Jet Set Radio. Along with that, and there's other characters I just can't remember, like Knights and Darila, I think, are also in it. There's a Sega Dreamcast VMU / controller / arcade cabinet you can get as a racer. There's also, for whatever reason, Disgraced Racer Danica Patrick and Disney tie-in Wreck-It Ralph. And then the PC version added Ryo from Shenmue and a whole bunch of Sega's PC properties that never got put on anything else. Anyway, courses are great. Some of the best in kart racing. And, you know, I really wanted Crossworlds to be more like this than just more Sonic-only racing with a hint of other stuff. And that hint doesn't even have voices. So it's like, here, you can have Mega Man and Pac-Man and a whole bunch of anime / cartoon show characters. And then we'll also throw in, like, the Joker from Persona, and Ichiban from Yakuza, and Arl from Puyo Puyo, and Knights. But they're not going to be voiced at all. And most of them don't get courses. There's only one Sega course outside of the Sonic franchise in the core game, and it's from Galaxy Force 2, which most people won't even know what that is. Anyway, I have a lot of feels about Crossworlds, and I would love to play it because I've heard great things about how it feels to play, but they haven't really done anything to hook me beyond racing, and I'm not... It takes more than just racing to get my interest. And the fact that out of all the Sonic games on this list, that Transformed is number 2 should say how good this game is and why I want something more like it. Last but not least, number 1 Sonic game of all time, for me personally, is Sonic Mania Plus. This was a loving follow-up to the 2D Sonic games done by fans. And they killed it. Beautiful to look at. Great music by T. Lopes. And Hyper Potion's doing a really fantastic intro. Tyson Heese did an incredible job leading the animation that's throughout the game. You get to play as 5 different characters, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, of course, but you also get Ray and Mighty, I believe are their names. And that's just fan-freaking-tastic. There's so many great callbacks, even Fang the Weasel, who just recently got reintroduced in Sonic Superstars, had a little bit of a callback in this first. There's a Puyo Puyo stage in it. That's just a wonderful callback to Mean Bean Machine. It's just a loving game all the way around, and it's genuinely the most well-executed Sonic game ever in terms of just how the speed works, how the platforming works. It all just clicks together beautifully, and it's just really fun. It's a really fun game, and I highly recommend it if you haven't played it. It's the best thing Sonic's done in the current gen. And there's been so many other Sonic games that have made attempts to do something. Sonic Mania is the one that did it. Alright, that is Sonic's anniversary ranking list out of all the games that I've played. I'm sure there's one or two I've forgotten. Like, there's a part of me that's like, did I play Heroes? I may have tried Heroes. I don't remember. I don't think I've demoed anything else. But there might be one or two that I just haven't thought about. But I think this is a wonderful set of games, especially the top 6. I think it would go like top 9, honestly, that I don't have major beef with. I have some beef with 3 and Knuckles, but I'll get over it. It's really a shame about 3, though, because we're never going to get a modern re-release with all the music as it originally was released. And that's really disappointing because, like, Ice Cap Zone is so good. It's such a great track, and we're never going to hear it again in a Sonic game. Never. Never going to hear that track again. Such a bummer. I guess that's another reason why Sonic 3 is lower on this list, too. It's like, you can't play it on a modern console outside of Origins, and you can't play it as it was originally released. Kind of defeats the purpose of the name Origins, doesn't it? Anyway. Alright. That will do it for this episode of Levels Plus Whenever. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, friends!